Guilty. That was the verdict handed down in the trial of Maria Garcia, who shot and killed 36-year-old John Anthony Seguin back in 2017.
In court yesterday, as things wrapped up, consistency and credibility were a big focus. Paul Venema was in court. Here's a clip from his story.
A verbal argument followed by a brief fight, then gunfire. 36-year-old John Anthony Seguin fell dead in the street, a single gunshot wound to the head.
That's the person that shot and killed John Anthony.
Prosecutor Jason Garahan reminded the jury of previous testimony about that argument between Seguin and 49-year-old Maria Dolores Garcia that preceded the shooting.
This defendant, roughly 2 hours before, was chasing John Anthony around a parking lot just down the street at Daniel's Food Mart, throwing rocks at him.
He argued that 4 witnesses identified Garcia as the killer.
And Paul Venema joins us now for our Wednesday court debrief. As always, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about these witnesses because it's kind of unique and different, the situation with those who testified.
Yeah, well, it's a curious lot of people, you have to admit. But you put it all in context, where it happened and who these people are, you would expect to get these kind of people as witnesses. It happened at a place they call the Tree, or Tree of Life, on a near West Side, a hangout for people who use drugs. So you factor that in, and what are you going to get for witnesses?
Well, you said one of them they actually put in jail on Friday just to make sure he'd show up to testify?
Exactly. Because these people aren't anxious to testify for any number of reasons. Number one, they don't want to be characterized by their colleagues on the street as a snitch, so they're reluctant to testify, and they have criminal records. Every one of them, with the exception of one person, had a criminal record going into this thing. So they're reluctant to come to court to testify. So the only option, of course, is to make sure they get there. And in the case of this gentleman they called what do they call him again?
I don't remember.
Capone. His street name was Capone.
Oh, Capone. Okay.
And they had to go out and arrest him on Friday just to make sure that he was in court and ready to testify on Monday.
And speaking of Capone, street name, you said that under examination or in testimony there in court, they asked him directly about his drug use and how recent that drug use had been.
Well, that was the second one, different witness.
Exactly. He was preceded on the witness stand by another witness. They asked him, they said, are you a drug user? And he had to admit, yes. He was under oath. He said, yes, I use heroin. And the next question was, when's the last time you used? This is 9 o'clock in the morning. He's on the stand.
Right.
They said, they asked him when was the last time you used heroin? He said, I shot up at 5 this morning.
And there's the rub, because we talk a lot in this particular segment about the credibility of witnesses, yet the prosecution obviously still has to make their case, even if the credibility of all their witnesses is on shaky ground.
That's right, and that's what they started with, as I mentioned earlier, where it happened, who is involved. That's what you're going to get for witnesses. You're not going to get people from some church choir.
And they tell the jury this before it even starts.
Yeah, that's part of what a jury is told as the trial begins, that the witnesses that you're going to hear from, you have an option, and this is where the jury's work comes in. You have an option. You can believe everything a witness says, you can believe nothing that the witness says, or you can sort it out and figure out what to believe and what not to believe. So that's where the hard work, if you will, of a juror comes in, because you've got to, in the short amount of time that you've got these people on the stand, you've got to weigh a lot of things, what they have to gain, where they're coming from, and how their testimony matches other testimony that they've heard. So being a jury in a case like this certainly is a challenge, being a juror.
Paul, give us a little preview about next phase of this trial.
Well, she's looking at she's looking at a maximum of life in prison, and whether or not the prosecution will ask for that, we'll find out here in a little while. But given the nature of the case, the background of her, and she has a criminal history as well, it's quite likely that the prosecution is going to ask for a pretty significant number of years. Whether they go all the way and ask for a life sentence, we're going to find out.
Is it going to be the jury or the judge who decides?
It's the jury. And that's a situation. Yeah, every defendant has that option at the outset of a trial. You can select who you want to assess your punishment. In this case, she elected to have the jury assess punishment.
Right.
So that's where we are.
Paul, thank you so much. Headed to court once again. Look for coverage on our later newscasts.